everybody, what's up? Welcome to the garden. Today we're going to be working on doing some propagation with our lilies, getting more lilies. In general, bulbs can be pretty expensive, so learning how to make more is always helpful. As always, don't propagate patent varieties, etc. Grab a pair of gloves too, because lily bulbs can be toxic. I should be wearing gloves, and my dad should be wearing gloves in this. Keep it away from kids and pets, they're toxic. Moving on from safety stuff, the first thing I'm going to do after my lily plants go dormant and die back, I'm going to dig up the bulbs. As you can see in this video, my dad is just carefully removing these scales one by one from the lily bulb. Now ideally we only want to remove about 1 to 2, maybe 3 layers around this bulb. I'm replanting this bulb so it can grow and continue to grow and get bigger. It may be stunted the first year after replant, but usually it recovers just fine as long as you don't take too many of those scales. As he peels these back, he's going to carefully make sure he tries to get as much of that base on the scale as possible, because that's where our future smaller bulbs are going to grow, as you'll see. After we've done that, all I'm going to do is just put these scales into a bag of potting soil, moist potting soil, and I'm going to put them in a warm, dry, dark place under my kitchen sink. I put it under my kitchen sink because they never get, nobody ever opens it. After a few weeks, little bulbils will start to grow and you'll see them. Don't worry. Be sure to check on it frequently to make sure mold's not forming. If it's starting to get moldy, your potting soil is too wet. It's a soilless potting medium. You want to make sure it's just damp, not wet. After that, I move it to the fridge for about 6 to 8 weeks. I'm sorry I don't have the video footage of that, but I just put it in my spare fridge, out of the way, nobody can get into it, for about 6 to 8 weeks. The reason I needed to do that is because this batch was for oriental lilies, and oriental lilies do need cold treatment, and depending upon the type of lily that you are trying to propagate, it will need varying amounts of cold treatment. So for these, it was about 6 to 8 weeks. I put them in at the end of December, and I just left them in there till the spring because, these are lily bulbs, so I wanted to mimic the natural growing pattern, natural growth kind of growth cycle. After I removed them from the fridge, you can see we just started kind of looking to see what we got here, and we had plenty of these little bulbils. Now these bulbils, they were visible after we got them out from, under the kitchen sink, out from the dark place. They were visible then, but even more so now, they even started to develop, some of them, little root systems. You see the nice little root systems, which I was so pleased. You can see that each scale has several of the little tiny bulbs on them, which will grow into our new lily bulbs. So really exciting. This is, the first time I've done this in this video. Now I've done it in a few years. I wanted to kind of update things, make a newer video. Anyway, after we have checked on the progress of those, I'm just going to grab a pot. I just grabbed a gallon pot. I'm sure you could probably do this in a raised bed as well. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little tiny bulbs and their scales that is still attached. I'm not going to detach them or anything like that. And I am going to arrange them in this pot. As far as I can tell, it doesn't have to be, meticulous or have any kind of organization to it. All I did was really just go through these and pick them out and put them in the pot and arrange them in a thick layer, a very thick layer. Ideally, I tried to make sure that the new little bulb was pointing up just so it had its best chance of survival and the best chance of growth, to make sure that it was going to have no trouble pushing through the soil. But in general, they seem to orient themselves very well. After I had arranged them in this bucket, you'll see with just potting mix, again, nothing fancy, nothing special. This is just regular old store-bought potting mix. I arranged them in the container, and then I covered them with about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of soil. Again, I didn't want to overwhelm the little tiny bulbs here. And after I had done that and packed it down, gave it a really good watering. After I'd done that, I just sat it outside in a bright sunny place, and I maintained the container throughout the entire growing season. Unfortunately, I do not have video of that, but I just basically treated it as I would a potted lily plant. The main reason that I wanted to plant these up in containers is because the first season of growth is very minimal. It's very small. Expect that it will need special care. I imagine that you could technically plant these directly into the garden, but me personally, I would be worried about weed pressure, especially if you're somebody like me who is not good at weeding the garden, or you know, you have a lot of grass or vines and things like that that can take over. I did not want to risk that by putting these in the garden with those. So basically what I did is I ended up growing them on for an entire season first, before, as you'll see a little bit later, our plants were finally big enough to kind of get into the ground and fend for themselves. So after the growing season goes by, we're going to kind of repeat the same process again. Basically, we are going to grow these all season long. They're not going to bloom, obviously. We're just going to have green foliage growth this first season. I'm going to grow these all season long. And by the end of the summer, we'll have that natural dieback with the plants again. You'll see here, my bucket, most of the little tiny green leaves died back very early, but I did have a couple of plants that were quite a bit larger than I had expected. You can see here in my pot, this is after the first season of growth. We had a lot of foliage. Some of them were quite large. Most of them were just little kind of leaves of grass, almost little blades of grass. So once these have dried out, all I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my pot out and I'm going to empty my pot. And again, I should be wearing gloves, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. Hopefully I'll learn one of these days. And I'm just going to dig around for my lily bulbs. These are the lily bulbs produced after one season of growth. You can see that they have tripled, maybe quadrupled in size. Many of them are quite large, which is absolutely amazing. To complete the process of propagating these lily bulbs, I am just going to plant these into the ground, is what I did. Of course, this is not a quick fix for somebody who wants instant flowers. This process takes years and years. In the video, usually it takes about 3 to 4 years. I have had blooms in year 2 before, but obviously they were very, very small, like tiny. But usually 3 to 4 years, you get a good sized lily bulb that will produce lots and lots of flowers for you. I realize that this is an investment in time, but you know, if you want to have a beautiful lily garden, you really can do so on a budget, which I think is always great because I'm always looking for ways to kind of tighten my budget up while still maintaining a garden that is very, very pretty. I have done this successfully with ornamental lilies and with Asiatic lilies. And like I said, this does take a little bit of trial and error and an investment in time, but overall, I think the process is definitely worth it. There are older videos on my channel in parts 1, 2, and 3 about this that I'm going to leave up just because the narration is different and it might be helpful. You know, because I recorded those at the time I was doing it, but I did try to update this one as best as possible. The main reason I wanted to make an update in the narration for this video is that I had a really successful time propagating these pink Asiatic lilies this year. I was able to take like 10 pink Asiatic lilies and turn them into like 200 pink Asiatic lilies, and they bloomed for the first time this year after 3 years, and they were just so gorgeous, and I was like, I need to share how to do this. People need to know how to do this because it's awesome. That's really about it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. Be sure if you have any questions, leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer it. I do try to get to all the comments, you know. At least once a week I try to answer them. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because of work. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. If you like growing flowers, we're growing a lot of flowers here. Tell a friend, share the video, all that good stuff. And no, this update isn't the greatest, but hopefully I'll be able to do an even newer one in the future. I'm just kind of restricted on time right now. As always, a link to all my stuff is down in the description. There's a link to the blog where you can find more information about a lot of the stuff that you see here on the channel, as well as there's a link to Patreon. Every little bit helps. I'm so appreciative of those of you that check that out. Also, we have a link to our wax melt subscription box if you like home fragrance. Just all this stuff just helps support the channel. I am so incredibly thankful I hope that you are having an incredible day. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.